All right, guys. Well, we've got Coach here, so we'll turn it over to him for an opening statement, start off spring ball, and then we'll open it up for questions.
All right. Thanks, Connor. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us on these virtual press conferences. We appreciate your coverage. Excited to start spring practice today at 4:00. And, first off, I want to congratulate Jen Hoover and our women's basketball team for making the NCAA tournament. First time since 1988. What a testament to Coach Hoover and her staff and her players of just keeping grinding, staying persistent. And it was very exciting to see them get that bid. And all of us are excited to watch them Sunday at 1:00. And wish them all the best. But again, congratulations on getting back to the dance. We've had a good off season. The transition to Chad Barry and his staff has gone well. We just did all of our testing in terms of the weights, and this is the first time we've been able to test for over a year. So typically we test before the start of spring football, and then at some point before we start summer camp. And we had a lot of work to do. We certainly lost some strength through the pandemic. I think we've got most of it back. For our older players, most of their testing numbers are back to where they were a year ago or a little bit ahead. And certainly we've made strides with the freshmen who got here, in the summer. That for the freshmen, a lot of them have made great progress. And that's a really important part of what we do in terms of our player development is we've got to get guys stronger. As you guys have seen over the years, we often bring in maybe undersized linemen that we have to put weight and strength on them. Usually over half of those gains will come in their first year. And so getting back into the weight room, allowing those gains to happen, getting our upperclassmen back to competitive strength levels. I did not feel a year ago we were as physical as we have typically been here when we've had our good seasons. I think that showed up on film, and I think it showed up late in the season. And so for us, getting that uninterrupted time in the weight room was really important. And now we go to the next phase of our season preparation, and that's spring football. So practice number 1 today. We've got a lot of good competition. We've got a lot of depth because of the numbers. And really it's 2 things. We have 9 seniors that are coming back for a 5th or a 6th year, and we have 8 mid-year players. And so that's really in some ways 17 additional players. And typically we'd have 2 or 3 mid-year guys. And this year we had 8, including the transfers. So we're probably, 13, 14, 15 players ahead of where we would typically be in a spring. So I'm excited that we're going to be able to go 3 deep, give a lot of guys reps, and I think that'll encourage competition and hopefully establish that elusive depth that we're always after here at Wake Forest. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Dave, who do you see as maybe the major competitions? Where will you be looking at first as you roll out a couple of these first practices?
Well, I'll start on offense. I think the competitive battle at running back between who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, who's 5. Christian Beal-Smith had a really good year for us. He is going to be in the mix, but we've added a lot of good young players there. So Justice Ellison, Quentin Cooley, Amani Marshall, Christian Turner, and then we're bringing in Will Towns this summer. And so that's a competition. We've always liked to play at least 2 running backs, if not 3. And, who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, who's 5. Today's the day that we start, that competition starts. I think at receiver, who's 3 through 7. Feel really good about what Jacory Roberson did. Feel really good about Donovan Green. Taylor Marin is out. And I think we've got a lot of talented receivers who separates themselves. Who are the starters and who are the guys that have earned reps. And then on defense, I think the defensive end position is one that Rondell Bothroyd's going to play in. We got Ja'Cory Johns back, but Jasheen Davis, Kendron Wayman, Royce Francis. We've got a lot of good candidates at that position that are trying to fill the void of a guy that will probably be a first-round draft pick. And then I think at corner, who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, who's 5. And then at safety, who's playable. And guys like Jalen Garnes and Quincy Bryant, and can Nick Anderson take the next step, and J.J. Roberts and Zion Keith. If those guys all make that step and that improvement, now we give ourselves depth. If they don't make it, then we're thin. So I think those are some of the major position battles going into it.
Dave, I guess one of the questions I have is, what did you do during the break to kind of decompress a little bit before you got back into it? And do you feel that your team also had some of that time to decompress before they came back to campus and started hitting it hard?
Yeah, you're never, ever able to totally get away, Les. I mean, that's, just another one of those great benefits of the transfer portal, that from the season's over, typically when your season's over, that's where you pull away and you maybe have, a week or 10 days to kind of decompress and take a deep breath and start doing your planning. And nowadays, those next 72 hours is when your players go into the portal and other players are going in the portal. And there's almost like a mini recruiting cycle that happens from the end of December until whenever you start classes in January. That's when the portal starts getting filled up. And so, okay, how many scholarships do you have? Because who left your team? Who is in the portal that we have to evaluate all those players the second they go in there. If a good player goes in the portal, 4 hours later, they have half a dozen offers. And so you've got to monitor that thing like it's the stock market or something, that who's in, let's watch film on them. And then for us at Wake Forest, it's that next step of, okay, can we get them in the school? And so that filtering process, puts us in a position that there's very few people in the portal that we can recruit. And then it's very competitive to recruit them. And so I would say from the second our bowl game was over until we started school, I mean, that's a sprint. You're trying to figure out, can you get them in? How many of their credits will transfer? Then can you get them eligible? And then you're figuring out, if they want to come, where are they going to live and all that other stuff. So there's really not a break. So it was kind of one sprint to another, but that's just college football nowadays. That there's not those built-in rests that we used to have. And like I said, the transfer portal has added a whole new dynamic to roster management, recruiting schedule, and now coaches' schedules. And if we're going to be competitive, we've got to keep our antenna up when those things happen.
In terms of recruiting, to kind of follow on that, from a macro perspective, how do you manage your roster? You've got at least a dozen redshirt juniors who would be redshirt seniors next year, and they all conceivably have the option, if they're wanted, to come back for another year, but you don't yet know if those will count against you in 2022. Am I right?
It's very challenging, Les. Like I said, the NCAA created this incredible benefit for the players. Hey, you all get an extra year of eligibility. And they gave us a waiver this year because the previous class was committed. But we're in a really tough spot now because, like you're saying, we have a number of juniors, and I have, upwards of 14 to 16 players that could come back for an extra year. Well, typically you'd say those guys are going to graduate, so you can sign 14 to 16 players. So, okay, do you fill those spots? And then those guys want to come back. So you're telling some great kids, no, you don't have room for them. Or you don't recruit a class. And then these guys don't come back. And you find yourself 10, 15, 20 short on your roster, which isn't safe. And so, they've created this illusion that they've given these guys an extra year of eligibility. And what we do is we kind of cut it down the middle, Les. My assumption is that some of these guys will come back. Some of them won't. And it's really challenging because, we're not in the business of having guys commit and then tell them we don't have room. But again, they've created this player-friendly rule on the front end, but they gave us no way to implement it. If Zach Tom wants to come back, you don't think we're going to want to have him back? We got some great kids here. But, if they have great years next year and have a chance to go to the NFL, or they're going to have Wake Forest degrees, they're going to have other job opportunities, hopefully in a better job market. And so, we've, as ACC coaches, we've expressed that concern to the leadership in our conference. I know other conferences have brought it up, and we need an answer now because we're making recruiting decisions now. This isn't one of those things that you can just kick it down the road till September, because then you're going to put us in the same position that you would have this year if you didn't allow the waiver for those guys not to count.
Are there any surprises in terms of guys who've impressed you in pre-camp workouts?
Yeah. There's been some, a guy like, I think Kendron Wayman has really caught our eyes in these workouts, that he's done a really nice job. Certainly both Christian Turner and Casey Washington look like guys that have played Power 5 football before. Quincy Bryan as a mid-year guy, I think came in and is getting through these drills extremely well, and he's getting himself in good shape. Just the movement skills of some of our older players. I think Sean McGinn is moving around really well. Michael Juergens, Chapman to me is in much better shape. Keyshawn Williams to me is a guy that we need to take that next step. So it's really all over the place. But yes, I'm really impressed with how we got through those morning workouts, because we didn't really emphasize conditioning. The big thing was, hey, we got to get stronger. And I thought, the first workout was a little bit ugly, and then they adapted pretty quickly. So we looked a lot different after the fourth one than the first one.
Dave, do you anticipate anybody missing spring ball with injuries or other reasons, or are you pretty much, you said it's a full roster, but
yeah, we'll have some guys miss. Taylor Marin and Terrence Davis and Michael Frogue are all gonna miss it. And on defense, Kenneth Dix, Nasir Greer, and Isaiah Chaney, those three guys will not be able to practice.
With the veterans though, what they can do. Is that kind of something along those lines as well? Because, the fall is going to be coming and you kind of know what those veterans can do.
Well, here's the good problem is because of the 9 guys that came back and because of the 8 guys mid-year, we're 3 deep. So typically in the spring, it's a challenge to be 2 deep. And so we're going to end up, giving our ones less reps, just because instead of the 10 reps or 12 reps being between 2 groups, now it's between 3 groups. And so, we had these guys transfer here. We had these guys enroll early. The only way they're going to get better is you give them work. And the good thing is that our depth now allows us, at least at the start of spring, to go 3 deep across the board. So we've never had a 3rd group. So, our ones need to play football. They need to get better. There's always technique stuff and always things you can get better at, but there's certain guys like a Zach Tom or a Brandon Chapman or a Trey Red that have played a lot of football. So typically those would be guys that if you only had 2 groups, you may cut them reps. But now because you have 3 groups, their reps are going to get cut naturally anyways.
And are you going to decide on maybe a spring game as you guys go through practice, or is that still kind of up in the air?
Yeah, we're just going to kind of roll with it and see what happens. Because, we don't have a crowd and there's not going to be fans. We didn't feel like we had to announce a spring game that you're then obligated to do. If we can get to the 15th practice and we have enough players that can go, we certainly want to give them game experience. But we'll probably make that decision the final week.
And wanted to ask you another thing, Dave. I know you guys did a good job. Jack did a good job with kicking the ball in the end zone. I mean, that people don't kind of overlook that, but are you going to have to find somebody this spring to do that, to kind of kick it in the end zone?
Absolutely. So trust me, I noticed it. We went from giving up 3 touchdowns on kickoff returns to 1 long return the whole year. And part of that was just people had less opportunity to return it. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal. That might be as critical as any battle we have going on.
Do you have some candidates?
With the extra year of eligibility, Connor said that he's been working on things. So we'll get him out there and take that extra year, Connor.
I'm good for a squib down the middle. That's about it.
Even that's an area we struggled, Connor. We need that specialty. So you still have a year left?
I'll see if the Elon credits can transfer.
Connor has a year of middle school eligibility left.
Well, we won't make you go through the mat drills, Connor, and we'll take away the squat test for you.
Watching Skiba and Dom tackle the rolling mat was one of the funnest things of spring football.
Well, again, we'll let you do that.
Dave, it's kind of been a concern the last 3 seasons, and I know you've talked about it a lot, but is there anything different to kind of present in terms of injury management to kind of make it through a season a little more unscathed?
Les, we had this issue in 2018. And then I thought we had a great plan in 19. I mean, 19 was the healthiest that we stayed. And all of a sudden, bam, it was just Justin Sternad, Luke Masterson, Scotty Washington, Sage Surratt. It just became these catastrophic injuries. But I thought we had a really good plan going into 19. And then this year, I mean, between COVID and injuries, we didn't have a normal camp. And so we're looking at it hard. That is a critical issue in our program, that we have to figure out a way to stay healthy and maintain our depth if we're ever going to take the next step as a program. And if there's ever a chance to do that, I think it's this year, because you really got those 9 extra scholarships of the guys who came back. And so we're looking at every injury, when it happened, how it happened. We're investing more money in the sports science, and I think part of it is just looking at injuries. And there's 2 issues. One, what can we do to prevent them from happening? And then secondly, how do you get guys back quicker? Because not only do we lose guys, but then, their return to play, for whatever reasons, sometimes get delayed. And, that's something that we have to invest resources in, and we are. And we think that probably has been the difference of us having 8-win years and 10-win seasons. And if we can stay healthy, I think that's, 1 or 2 or 3 more wins. So people smarter than me are looking at that, Les. And I'm certainly involved with it, but again, it has been a source of frustration, I think, for our players, for our staff, and even our fan base. What can we do to stay healthier and keep depth and not let these good starts end with late season fizzles?
you might be at your happiest, I think, in spring camp. It's when you're the most energetic, most excited, you're skipping around the field. When you take the field today at 4 o'clock, what has you most excited about the start of this spring camp?
It's just to be out with our players. And I think, last year, I think we did the right thing by playing. I think it was good for the student athletes to have something to do, and, the testing, the medical care they received. I don't regret doing it. It was not a lot of fun. I mean, it was just, it was a grind. It was a grind on the coaches, the players, everybody involved. And I think now there's light at the end of the tunnel. A number of our players and some of our staff have had the opportunity to be vaccinated. We're not there yet, but I see a light at the end of the tunnel. And to just be out there again with our football team, I think there's a lot of positive energy and a lot of enthusiasm for next season. And not just because I think we're going to have a good football team, but I think things are slowly going to get back to somewhat normal. I don't know if they'll be completely normal, but it's certainly a sense of optimism that there'll be a little less restrictions.
And Dave, along those lines, what are going to be the protocols here for spring ball? Are you guys going to be testing?
We're just like the season.
Okay.
We're testing. We're wearing masks. Right now, we're with in-season protocols. So out there today, I'll have a mask. The players will have masks. We're still getting tested multiple times a week. This is still a very formidable opponent, and it hasn't been defeated. And so we have a lot of respect for the virus. We don't like it, but we have a lot of respect for it.
And you mentioned something about earlier in the year. Are they all going to have single rooms? Because that kind of helped, I guess, when you talked about them living in suites and things like that.
I mean, if this still goes on, it's going to be really hard for us to get through the season if we don't have that. I mean, that didn't help us last year. Certainly when you cancel games, the impression is that you have COVID running rampant through your football team. That was not the case. At times we had single digits, which because of the contact tracing put us down 30 some people. And that was because of the communal living. So I think we're learning a lot about this virus every week. Do things change because of the vaccination? People who have had it, but we're going to follow whatever the ACC's the MAG group, the medical advisory group, tells us, and we're still following all of those protocols. And I just don't know if they know enough about the effectiveness of the vaccine. How long does it last? How long can you be out of contact tracing? There's a lot of elements to that we don't know about, that we're hoping as time goes on, those all become positive news, but we just don't know yet. I know this, I'll be happy on these press conferences when I don't have to talk about COVID and contact tracing. And so
I'll be happy when I write articles and don't have to use the word COVID or pandemic. So we talked to Chad Berry yesterday. Take me back to you and Chad at Bowling Green. What was your first recollection of meeting him? And then how easy of a decision was it to bring him along with you to Wake Forest when you got this job?
I mean, every move with Chad's been a no-brainer. We hired him as an intern. Of all the interns that Coach Horgan hired, he was certainly one of the, if not the most impressive. And we had a job open. He's like, I don't need to interview. I've got the next guy here. And bringing Brandon and Chad here were very, very important when I was offered the job. Those two worked extremely well together. They had a great relationship. They played off each other really well. They have different personalities. And they worked extremely well together, and they were a great team. But it's just like coaches or players, when you see somebody develop, to me, for the last 2 years, I could see the development of Chad, that I knew he was ready to be a head strength coach. And I didn't want to lose Coach Horrigan, but my hope was that if he did leave, that Chad wouldn't leave first. You know, as long as we had Chad, I had the replacement in-house. And so it was a very easy decision. He's been ready for a couple of years to be a head strength coach. And to be very honest with you, strategically, the last few years, I've tried to make his salary more competitive. So it was going to be hard for him to take an FCS or a group of 5 head strength job.
What have you seen in terms of the acceptance level from the players, you know, since he's taken over?
I mean, it's been seamless. I mean, there were, I think, a lot of angst when Coach Horrigan left, and I think all of it disappeared when we hired Chad. So the players believe in what we do in the weight room. They love Coach Horrigan, but they knew what a big part of that Chad was. And, you know, Chad's a different personality, and a lot of the things we do the same, but like with any position, you got to let the person in charge do things they want to do. So a lot of the things we're doing are similar, but he's made some changes that he believes in, that he thinks will benefit our football team, and he certainly has the freedom to do that.
Anything else for Coach, guys?
Well, we'll miss you guys out there today.
Has Eric decided on college yet, Dave?
He has.
Yeah, our daughter and I they're deciding this weekend, so that's good.
He has. He's, you know, he didn't have a letter signing day or didn't have a press conference though, but he's
Good.
made a silent commitment.
Yeah, same with my daughter, silent.
There's
Congrats.
some cat picking going on.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thanks, everybody.